Let's talk about the spring statement. Not feeling spring in her step today, Rachel Reeves. Utterly pointlessly. I mean, it actually really gets my goat when chancellors do the Sunday morning round, the week of either a budget or a spring statement. The Tories are calling this an emergency budget, which to a certain extent it is, because, you know, things have got worse, largely due to the events of the last budget by the Labour Party. Utterly pointlessly saying, well, you know, I can't tell you what's going to be happening on Wednesday. Well, then don't sodding well bother doing telly and wasting our time. Why don't you do the interview on the Sunday afterwards so we can then have some analysis when we've seen all the figures? But lots of talk about a £2 billion budget cut, sort of a 15% cut off, you know, but sort of backroom spending, kind of Doge-like, Elon Musk-like spending cuts. We're told some 10,000 civil service job cuts it could mean. Unions are saying it could be 50,000. I would say neither of those figures is big enough. But what do you make of that? Yeah, well, the first thing to say about the civil service is it has ballooned in recent years. When the Tories first came into power with the Lib Dems in 2010, they began to cut how it had grown under Gordon Brown's administration. But basically, once we went into the Brexit referendum and the COVID, we added about 100,000 positions to the civil service, none of which have been cut, all of which have been placed on a sort of permanent footing. And now the moment we try and deal with 10% of those, 10,000 jobs, howls of outrage. So we still won't go back to where before. And of course, added loads more people post-lockdown or lockdown almost. But again, we have more people paid more, doing less, many working from home, and we have worse services. It doesn't add up, does it? It just simply doesn't add up. It's jobs for the boys. Yeah, well, this is it, right? I don't think anyone would mind, right, if you felt like you were getting a GP appointment that day, if you felt like the schools were getting better, that our armed forces were more prepared, were ready. But you go through the list of government achievements over the last few years, and this isn't political, right? Just, is the government doing its basic job? Is the civil service functioning? And it's fail, 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 fail. And yet, as you say, pay rises, promotions, more jobs, copper-plated or gold-plated pensions as well.
It's all right for those in Whitehall, and while the rest of us who are forced to pay for all of this keep getting squeezed to the pips.
I have to say,
and that's what this budget is for having to deal with.
And this thing, and the reality is, you know, again, with so much of what we're going to be hearing in the spring statement on Wednesday, goodness me, we're going to be talking about it an awful lot, don't we? We won't take it live. We'll analyse it live as it happens, but we won't force you to listen to it because, again, I like you too much. But this is basically going to be dealing with the fallout from the autumn statement, which just has been catastrophic for the economy, given that the number one aim of the Labour Party when they were running for the election was growth, 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 growth. We're going to achieve all the things we want to do. We're not going to have to put, you know, individual working families' taxes up, but we're going to get growth. Well, there ain't no growth. We've had a downgrading of the forecasters by, you know, half for this year. And again, those forecasts are nearly always wrong, but they're often wrong in a more optimistic way than the other way round. We are seeing, you know, what a surprise. You put taxes up on business like the employer's national insurance and other taxes and other costs, minimum wage going up. Again, that's great for people on minimum wage, but fundamentally, can a business afford that? And businesses are closing down. They are stopping hiring. We have seen a huge number of businesses close down in the last year or so. Something like just that tens of thousands. We now know that the average price of a pint in Britain is going to hit £5 for the first time in a few weeks. £5, and that is directly because of landlords who couldn't make it. They were closed down. They couldn't make a profit for years because of lockdown. Even when they were allowed to reopen, they couldn't make a profit because they were limited number of people they could have in and the like. And people haven't come back on the same basis. They are absolutely struggling. All of the extra costs they've been hit with, and they've got no sort of basic sort of backup buffer in terms of their finances, because that's all gone during the lockdown. They're having to pass the prices on, and of course the more the price goes up, the more people don't go to the pub, and it's a downward spiral. And yet again, pubs aren't just another business over there. Pubs are often the lifeblood of a local community. They're really important for a lot of people who don't have a network of friends and family through work and the like. This has been an absolute disaster. Do you have any hope that anything that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, will announce on Wednesday that will basically backtrack on those terrible decisions and improve the economy, or do you think she's going to double down?
Well, the worst thing to say about them, of course, is actually those national insurance rises haven't even hit yet, right? Yeah. All of the damage we are seeing now is people panicking in advance. The worst is yet to come. You ain't seen nothing yet. And look, prices are going up through the roof, and that is why I think the Bank of England has had to slow down the rate at which it's bringing down interest rates, because it can see that the government, the way they've imposed taxes has hit those parts of the economy that go directly onto people's pocket. And you're absolutely right to highlight pubs. I mean, I was cheering to myself the other day when I managed to find a pint for less than £7 in London. I mean, London,
£5 would be like, oh, that's a cheap pint. Yeah.
Look, I tell you what,
I have a teenager, so I know where all the cheap pints.
If anyone knows where you can get a decent £5 pint in London, please call in, because
seriously, genuinely, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call in.
Yes, we would. Julia and I, it's fair to say, do like a pint. So
I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, to be fair, I'm more a glass of sort girl, but you know, if it is a good indicator. No, but it is a big factor, and it's a factor in people's quality of life. We're not supposed to be surviving. We're supposed to be thriving. We're supposed to be having a good life. We're supposed to be a first world country.
Well, there is one person, of course, who is thriving on the back of.
Well, very nice to see what he did there. Rachel Reeves has had to defend once again the reopening of Freebiegate. What a surprise! She has defended taking 2 free tickets. She keeps saying a member of my family as a daughter. She took a daughter to a Sabrina Carpenter gig. No, me neither. Big hit, Espresso, big hit. So well done. But apparently these tickets are just simply not available to the general public, let alone the Chancellor. But she got given freebie tickets in a box. They're worth £600 each. She said they couldn't buy these tickets, she pointed out in an interview yesterday, which is like, well, I mean, you could have bought other tickets. But she accepted them, she says, for security reasons. And this is the line that Keir Starmer used about being in the box at Emirates. Even though plenty of prime ministers, plenty of have sat in football, in the normal stands, have sat everywhere. The idea that she can't, incognito with a bobble hat on, go to Sabrina Carpenter concert is for the birds.
Yeah, and look, right, let's be very clear. This woman makes 6 figures a year, right? She can fork out £1,300 for her own tickets. I mean, Sabrina Carpenter's big song last year was Please, Please, Please. And you can only imagine
I love that you looked that up.
Only imagine her begging, and we don't know who this donor is yet. Somebody has given her these tickets. Now, what do they expect in return?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing. I mean, people get, there is a world in which people get offered freebies, and thank you very much indeed. But my thing is, even in my job, I am required to declare anything that could impact how I would talk about the show. I've been offered a number of trips, for instance, to Israel. Okay, and just sort of, fact-finding trips, journalistic trips, not sort of hey, we want to reward you for being supporter of Israel. Not, because I know that's what people are going to say. But I have declined those, partly because, again, I can't do my show at the same time as doing those sort of trips. But mainly, crucially, I don't want to accept anything that anyone could ever say to me, yeah, but you got a free flight and a free trip or a free hotel while you were on this fact-finding mission or whatever, and that has impacted how you talk about this subject. Never a penny, because it's so important to me that I know that I have integrity. So I find it extraordinary. Main thing, and I was just saying to Mike about this, the main thing about these freebies for me is, do I really care whether or not Rachel Reeves takes her daughter to a pop concert or not? Well, not really. Does it make any difference to my life? Well, no, not really. I think she should spend her own money. She's high earner, so is her husband. Mike was just saying they're combined salary of 370 grand. I think they can probably afford to buy some tickets, which are probably still available for that concert on all the ticket websites, and pay a few £100 for them. But she doesn't, because they want a freebie, and they think that it's a L'Oreal defence. I'm worth it. But it's the lack of good judgment that makes me question. Why do they think that when you're making a load of cuts, I agree with those cuts, I think the welfare cuts don't go far enough, but why do they think you can't be cutting winter fuel payments for poor pensioners and then taking freebies worth £600? You just, do they not understand that here's my thing, Do they know we can see them? Do they know that?
Would Julia, it's actually worse than that, because they do know we can see them, because for 5 years they were whinging and whining every time the Tory party politicians did exactly the same thing. They accused them of corruption, all sorts, every name under the sun. Do you know what? Like, fair enough. But they've walked in here, into government, and they have been deliberately hypocritical. They think they are sitting there cosy, rosy. It's their turn. It's their time.
We're different from them.
They just don't care that they're getting criticised, because they don't believe that the opposition to this government is going to be sufficient to get themselves kicked out.
So
this
they can
is a
get away
government
with it.
that thinks it's walking into 2 terms guaranteed.
But again, I think the Shadow Business Secretary, Andrew Griffiths, is crazy to have taken that the freebie to Davos, the ski trip. It's a parliamentary ski trip, wasn't taking his family or anything. But again, it's just misjudgment on MPs' parts. I just think they really need to read the room. And I'm not one of those people who goes, oh, they should live on minimum wage or anything like that. But read the room, guys. People are struggling. I want to ask you about this, because it's a combination of the two stories, isn't it? It's Chancellor Rachel Reeves set to cut public spending and civil service jobs this week, but she's defended accepting 2 freebie £600 concert tickets for herself. I want to know your reaction to that. Does freebie gate still bother you? I mean, again, it just shows to me how utterly out of touch these people are with ordinary people's lives, your and mine lives. What is your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Don't forget, of course, that calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1, standard network rate message. But, you know, if you don't want to talk about just the freebie issue to it, really, with the spring statement, what do you expect to hear? Because if it is 50,000 or 10,000 civil service job cuts, a £2 billion budget cut to Whitehall, is that too much? Is that going too far, or is it actually just not enough, as we had with the welfare reforms last week? Just doesn't touch the size of what really needs to be done. I'd love to hear from you. As I say, the number 0344 499 1000. Let's also just talk, before we go to a break, about Heathrow. Fascinating interjection from the chief executive of the National Grid this morning in the Financial Times. This is John Pettigrew. He spoke for the first time since that fire at electricity substation led to epic long closure at Heathrow Airport, the busiest airport in the world. And he said, though, Heathrow Airport did have enough power to continue operating, certainly to restart again much quicker than it did. 200,000 passengers affected. I would say national embarrassment, frankly, more than anything else. We've now learned that numerous other major airports around the world do actually have more backup power to make sure they can keep operating because of the long-term impact and the huge cost of this. But he said, basically, you know, there were 2 other substations. You could have got power from those, and it's a matter of reconfiguring everything. The Transport Secretary has now, she's been out there busy on a media round today, but she's instigated an investigation into this and looking into what's really going on. But it sounds to me just like inept management, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you can only imagine that there was some sort of health and safety manager, some middle
safely rebooted,
pen-pushing, paper-shuffling official that was sat there and just said no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And look, nobody ever thinks about the passengers, but it's hugely damaging, actually, I think, to Heathrow as a business. You know, this is an airport that was once one of the global hubs for international aviation. So many flights came via Heathrow. Increasingly, that's moved out, based at Schiphol in Amsterdam, and indeed out to countries in the Gulf. Why? Well, for 2 reasons. Firstly, I think it's a national embarrassment that we haven't been able to build a 3rd runway for 20 years
and the rest, 50.
And secondly, because there has been a total lack of investment, total lack of product delivered for the customer, which means it's just a drastically more pleasant experience to travel around the Gulf airports than it is a British airport.
I mean that's the thing. Again, also so many people being basically redirected to European, continental destinations, to Ireland, to Glasgow. When people listening to some people on the radio talking about being diverted to Glasgow because the other London airports, particularly Gatwick Airport, operate at such high capacity. They don't have any spare room for any extra flights. We've got this. We have so many. It's like our hospitals, our airports, everything runs at just breaking point capacity.
Creepy.
We have no room for manoeuvre when things go wrong. It's just not a way to run a first world country. It just doesn't work. We need to have the backups, and it just shows also how our critical infrastructure is so vulnerable and so at risk. So what? Someone would just have to go and firebomb substation and they can take out an entire airport.
Every single service in this country, every single part of the government is creaking.
Yeah.
It's almost as if we have accidentally imported millions of people to the same level of services in this country without noticing over the past 15, 20, 25 years and haven't built everything that comes with it. Because, look, never forget, every new migrant, they don't come with another mile of road, they don't come with another hospital bed, they don't come
with
with
a water reservoir, or the extra nuclear power. Again, it is extraordinary, isn't it? And these are the people in charge who are supposed, they're the experts. Remember, they're the experts. We're just people whinging about the price of a pint. That's all we are. We don't understand anything, except most of us understand it all an awful lot better than they do, it would appear. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. You want to get in touch about Heathrow, want to get in touch about the freebie gate, the spring statement, what you're expecting to hear, what you're worried about, the price of a pint. If you do have your suggestions where you could buy a decent pint for under a fiver, certainly in London, love to hear your calls.